Spurs 4, West Ham 1, and what a huge statement victory this is for Ange Postecoglou and his men. He's a manager who's come under a lot of criticism lately, and despite the fact that this is only West Ham, and Spurs fans definitely shouldn't get carried away, I honestly think this is their best performance of the season so far. Not just because of the goals, but the fact that they went 1-0 down and they didn't capitulate. They actually responded at the other end, held their composure till half-time, and they just got better and better in the second half. There was a couple of notable individual performances as well that we'll get onto in a moment, but I have to give respect to Ange Postecoglou because no matter what you want to say about this manager, he has made Spurs entertaining to watch again. And not just for Spurs fans either. As a United fan, there was a 3 or 4 year period where I stopped watching Spurs unless they played against my club or one of the other traditional big six because it just felt boring and disinteresting to watch Spurs, and honestly it was better watching paint dry. But that's changed now. Spurs are genuinely one of the most entertaining teams to watch in the league, and today's game is the perfect evidence of that. It may not always work because Spurs are definitely not going to score 3 to 4 goals every single week, and they certainly have a lot of issues in terms of being very one-dimensional, but at least they have an identity. And I know that some people will cringe when they hear that, but I mean this. As a United fan, there is a way to lose football matches. And I am being dead serious when I say if my team is going to suck, I would rather suck and play entertaining football than suck and be bored at the same time. Because where's the joy? Football is about entertainment, and we are supposed to enjoy watching our football clubs. There is supposed to be an element of excitement beyond trophies, because if trophies are off the table and your club's too bad to win trophies anyways, you want to be entertained. You want to be invested in some way, shape or form. And I think Ange has brought that back to Spurs. I think he's given Tottenham Hotspurs a part of their identity back, which they so desperately needed since the departure of Pochettino. That deserves a lot of credit. That deserves a lot of praise, in my humble opinion. Now, in terms of individual performances, I thought Kulusevski was amazing today. He was at the epicenter of everything good for Spurs today. He was really good, and he's a player that I watch for Spurs time and time again and walk away feeling like, man, I really like this guy. Even when he's not playing to the best of his ability, there were just moments and sparks in games where I think this guy has so much to offer. And I wish sometimes that he played for my club, because there's certain wingers that I would ship off immediately and take Kulusevski over. And I'm not even joking or being reactionary. I mean, I like Kulusevski. Son, I thought he also had a pretty decent game today. I don't know what changed about Son now versus pre-injury, but this is one of the better games he's had all season long. I don't think Son has been that good for Spurs recently when I've watched him. This has been one of his better games, and I mean, yes, it is West Ham. They're not that good. We have to emphasize that point, but credit where credit is due. You can only play what's in front of you, and to be out for injury and then come back and immediately have an impact the way he did, I think it's huge. It's not just the goal, but he was making runs, he was taking players on, and he was asking questions of that West Ham defense throughout the 90 minutes. Apart from Son, I think someone like Basuma probably had a really good game and probably deserves a shout in terms of good individual performances. I thought he was really good today. And if he played like this every single week, then I think he'd actually live up to the hype that he had when he was at Brighton. And we would actually be singing his praises. Not just Spurs fans, but rival fans like myself and rival fans of other clubs would actually be a lot more open to the idea of praising Basuma. But unfortunately, he doesn't play this well every week, and it is just West Ham. I don't know what else to say in terms of individual performances. I guess we could talk about Udogie. He's a confusing player when I watch Spurs, because going forward, I can see what he offers. I can see the vision. But defensively, he's such a massive liability. And going forward, he's not on the level of Trent. He's not on the level of Reece James or Diego Dalot or Mazraoui or all these other offensive fullbacks in the league who I actually rate going forward and technically, right? So I don't know that his offensive contributions outweigh his defensive liabilities, especially in a Spurs team that plays such an aggressive high line and is so vulnerable on the counter-attack. Again, if it wasn't West Ham, if it was another decent team who goes 1-0 up within the first 13 minutes, I think we see a very different game away at Spurs today. Like, I think there's so much evidence to draw on over the last 18 months that when Spurs come up against a decent team that is able to exploit that high line, then you start to see all the problems in their team. And West Ham, it must be stressed, are not a very good team. And this is taking nothing away from Spurs. I've praised Spurs for most of this video, but I just want to talk a little bit about Lopetegui and how bad West Ham have been. Because they got battered by Manchester City. That's not really a big deal, especially on the opening day of the season. Nobody's going to be batting an eyelid about that because Manchester City are Manchester City and West Ham are West Ham. But They then drew to Fulham. They got battered by Chelsea 3-0 in a derby. They got battered by Liverpool 5-1. And they were unable to beat Brentford, right? They only were able to get the one result against Ipswich Town, but they are awful. And then they got battered again by Spurs. And the thing is, it's not so much that West Ham are losing games, it's how they're losing games and how easy it is that they're getting carved open. That's the issue for me. And I always say that in football, there's a way to lose. And one of my cousins that I talk about football with always laughs at me when I say this because they don't think it's coming from a genuine place. But I mean it. There's a way to lose in football, especially in a derby. There is a way to lose. It doesn't matter how good the opposition is. There are certain things that have nothing to do with talent or skill that are fully in your control that you need to take care of. And then if you still get battered, but you've taken care of those things, cool, right? This is positional awareness. This is tracking your runners. Stuff that has nothing to do with talent or God-given ability. This is just basics of football. Actually putting in the effort, trying to cover as many blades of grass as you can, eliminate the things that have nothing to do with skill or talent so that the rest can take care of itself. And maybe, who knows, you might get lucky because it's a derby. You might actually scam a result. When I see Everton go away to Liverpool or play at home at Goodison Park against Liverpool, I know that Liverpool are the better team. On paper, Liverpool should win. But guess what? It's a derby. It's an equalizer. Same with Manchester United versus, okay, maybe that's not a good example because the Manchester City derby has been pretty one-sided. But most derbies, if you get what I mean, the London derby, etc., etc. There's so many London derbies, but the North London derby is the one I was specifically talking about. There's so many examples of derbies where teams that have no right to be beating the opposition or even giving them a competitive game end up giving them a competitive game because it's a derby and you get up for it. And West Ham haven't been able to even do that. Forget winning, forget getting results. They haven't even been able to put up convincing performances apart from the Ipswich Town game. And it's a worrying time for Lopetegui. It's a worrying time for West Ham fans. And the stark contrast and the bleak downgrade it's been since the David Moyes era, looking now at the Lopetegui era, is kind of crazy. I'm not saying that they should have kept David Moyes. I'm not saying that they should go back in for David Moyes. But I definitely think the conversation is worth having because how do you get this bad after sacking someone who, in the eyes of many West Ham fans, was pretty bad in David Moyes? And I don't blame them because the football was atrocious under David Moyes. But how do you get worse? There's so many players in that West Ham team that I would actually take at United. I'm looking at their squad. Even the team that started today, Todibo, I would take him as a centre-back at United. I wanted him in the summer, right? Paqueta, I would take in the midfield 100%. Barring his betting scandal, right? If that got cleared, I would 100% take him. Mohamed Kudus, I would take him over all our attackers. Every last one of them. Antonio, maybe not so much now, but there was a time where I would have taken Mikel Antonio. Jared Bowen, definitely. I would take him at Manchester United. There are so many players in that West Ham team that I would take in an instant, in a heartbeat, like that, without even thinking twice. And I would swap them for some of Manchester United's best players because I rate them that highly. And so for me, when I look at this West Ham team, I see a team that's massively underperforming, and I see a manager who's inevitably going to get sacked, barring a miracle run of games between now and the end of the year. It's been your boy Triple M. Let me know what you think in the comments down below of that West Ham and Spurs game, regardless of who you support. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. Leave a thumbs up to support the channel. And as usual, enjoy the rest of your Saturday afternoon. I'm going to go watch Manchester United probably lose to Brentford now. And if we do win, I'm embarrassed to say this, but I almost don't even care anymore. That's what Erik ten Hag has done to me. Peace.